Hello everybody. In this screencast we're going to look at SAX XML parsers. Basically it's a very simple parser. It's based on generating events. You give it access to the XML stream and it's going to generate events. The events, for example, this is the person XML. Here's the URL. You go there, you get to the person XML and you could see that this is element start, some text, and then element end, element start, some text, element end, and so on. Element start, some text, element end, and then at the end it's going to be element end and then document end. All right. So let's start by just generating first a person class, okay, a class to hold the person information, and inside that person, the person has a string name. And let's do also the age as a string. We can make it an integer if we want. We just cast it. Now also let's generate a new class. Also call it address. All right. And then under the address we have string line 1, city, state, and zip code. So that's basically the address class, and this is the person class. Now the person also has an address. Okay, we'll call it address. So basically the person has an address, which is of the address class. Now let's generate the getters and setters. Here is the getters and setters for everything. Similarly, I'll do the same thing for the address. Here's the getters and setters for the address, all of them, and so on. So I have the person class and the address class. Very nice. So now let's look at how to implement the person parser. Before we do that, I need to set up the code to retrieve the XML. So this is the URL. Here is my URL, and I'll call it get person. Here it is, and basically I can run it and see if it's going to return something. Let's run this, and here's the logcat, and basically here it is. It did return the XML. You could see the XML coming back in the response. All right, so that's straightforward. I'm able to get the person. Now I would like to parse it. Okay, so now let's look at how do we parse. So we need to create a new class, and I'll call it the person parser. Person XML parser. Okay, that's the person XML parser. And the person XML parser is going to help me in parsing the person. Okay. Now, that person XML parser is going to extend, or is going to implement the handler for receiving the events from the XML parser. Extends default XML handler. So basically, it's going to extend that, meaning it's going to handle the events that are coming in from the parser. Okay. So let's create a method. I'll call it the method called parse, and that method called parse is going to return a person. Okay. So to do that, maybe we let's see. So let's say it's going to return a person. Let's say public. It's going to return a person. We'll call it parse. And we'll see what needs to be passed to it, but it's going to return a person. So basically, either the person is local here, or we can have a person that we create. So it doesn't matter. So let's say we create a local a person here. We call it person. Okay, and basically it's going to parse. So basically we'll have the code here to parse, code to do the to initiate the parsing, right? And then we are going to return person, the person that we parsed. Now to enable the parsing, we need to just set up the parser, and to set up the parser we just do XML dot and parse. There is a function called parse, and you could see that it needs an input stream. You know, I'm not going to send it the string. If I send it the string XML, then I'm wasting the capability of a string XML, meaning that I will read all the input stream, change it into a string, and then parse, which is going to take too much of the memory, especially if the XML is really large. So the easiest way is to pass an input stream, and I'll show you how to get an input stream from the OK HTTP response. It needs an input stream, needs some kind of an encoding, and the handler. The handler is actually this, right? The one we just implemented. So basically, let's assume that whenever you want to parse, you're going to send me an input stream. Okay, so you're going to send me an input stream that you'd like to parse. So when I say XML parse, I'm going to pass the input stream that is received. The encoding is XML, basically XML, and then the encoding is capital E encoding dot, and it's going to be UTF-8. All right. And then what is the handler? The handler is this, right? So basically it's the instance of this, right? Now it's not happy because parsing can generate, if you look here, it can generate an exception. So basically I'll just add exceptions to the method here. This means that when you call this method, because of the parse here, this could generate an exception. That the exception goes up all the way to the method, and it should be handled by whoever is going to call this method. All right, so xml.parse, it actually ties up, reads the input stream, and then it triggers the events through that handler. Okay, we'll look at the events and we'll go from there. So basically that's all what we need to do from just to set up things. Now we need to implement the methods. So methods like, for example, start element. See, there is one called start element. Let's not start with start element, start document. So start document, here's start document. Also there is end document, see here. And there is start element, right? And then there is end element. And there is also character found. So basically it's called character. So basically whenever there are characters like these, like for example, this is a character, these are characters, these are characters, these are events that are going to be captured. This one is an element start. This one is an element end, okay? All right. Okay, so that's one thing to look at. Now, what we need to look at now is, running it. Let's see what happens when we run this, right? So let's also do a log d in the document start, and let's create the tag. So I don't have to worry about this tag. Okay, so here's the tag. Start document, end document. So I'll call log d. End document, log d, start element, end element, end element, and then character. We'll just look at these later, but just to show you what's going on. Now the start document, end document. Now I would like to get also here, you see here I'm getting the string URI, I'm getting the local name, the qualified name. Let's also add the local name here to this, just to show you that I'm able to get the local name and the qualified name. See, very interesting. This element start. So basically, you see, this is the element end, this is the element start, and the element start you get the URI, the local name, and the qualified name, and also you get the attributes. Attributes are these. These are attributes. So you can get, which is a key value pair also. So you can get the ID from when the element starts. So anyhow, so let's run this and see what do we get. Okay, so here it is. And okay, we never tied up things together. We never called this or never used it or something. So now let's see where we want to use it. To use it, we are not going to use the string. This actually changes the input stream into a string. So to do this, let me check. So I need to get an input stream from the response. So let's see response. Okay, dot body dot input. I need something that has an input stream. So if I look here, see here, there is byte stream. It returns an input stream. Perfect. So that's what I'm going to use. Okay. Response.body.byteStream. So let me create a person parser, an instance of the person parser. Person parser. I'll call it parser. And person parser equals new person parser. Okay, here it is. And then I know that the person equals the person parser dot parse, right? And I'm going to pass it an input stream, which is this, right? Here it is. And as we said before, we don't need this code anymore. This can cause an exception because the parse, it actually could trigger an exception, because see, it could throw an exception. Here, the parse function that we just created could throw an exception, right? So now here, all I have to do is just surround this by a try catch. Okay. So now this has the person. It does all of that stuff. We can move all of this also here. We can move this here just for the sake of organizing things. Here it is. So this means that when the response is received, check to see if it's successful, create an instance of the parser, we generate an input stream from the body, we pass it on to the parser, and then what happens is it calls the parse function, and the parse function triggers, wires up the input stream to the handler, and it will start generating these events. So let's run it and see if we get these events or no. So we'll look here. All right, so we're getting these events being fired. You see here, start document, start element, you see here, start element person, then start element name, see, start element name, then some characters show up, right, because of the Bob Smith shows up, and then start element age, see here, so we need to end element name, here is end element name, start element age, here it is, then there is the 25, which is the characters. I'll print these characters for you in a little bit. And then there is end element. Here is the end element, and so on. So basically, start and they happen in sequence. See the address start, and then line start, line end, city start, city end, state start, state end, zip start, zip end, address end, and then person end, and then document ends. You see here, it happens in a sequence. So we just need to catch the data as it goes into the sequence, right? As we are getting these events, we need to catch these events and figure out what we need to do and what data we need to grab at different instances. For example, when we have the start, I could come here. I could say, for example, if the local name dot equals, right? If it equals person, this means that the person is starting. I could say person equals new person. I can create a new person at this stage because this is telling me that there's a person element that started. Right, I could also set the ID. I could say person dot ID or dot, oh, we don't have the ID. Let's add the ID to the person. Okay, let's go here. Person, let's add an ID to the person. Okay. And we can add a getter and setter for it. So let's say generate, where's the generate? Generate getter and setter for the ID. Here it is. Okay, cool. So we did that. Now I need to get the ID. I'll say dot set ID. How do I get the ID? Now to get the ID, you need to use the attributes. You see here, you get the attributes. All right, so here is the attributes. Attributes dot, and then I'm gonna get by. I need to get it by the name. So get what? Get value by name. See here it is. Get value by name. All right. So basically, I'm going to pass it the name, and it's gonna get me a value. All right, perfect. So I'll do that. And what's the name? The name of its ID. All right, so here it is. I already got it. So this is how you get attributes and so on. So basically, let's do a toString here. Let's say generate toString for this function, for this, here it is. And also for the address class, let's create a toString. Let's generate a toString so that we can print them. All right, here we are. We have it here. Okay, good. So we can set the ID here. So why did we catch the ID here? Because the ID is only available when the element starts. When element starts, you get the first element, the element, I mean, and then under the element there is an attribute. We get the attributes here. See, when the element starts. All right. So that's when the element starts. We are able to catch that. So now if we go back to the main activity, let's say after the person is done, I could say log d, just print the person, just to have a look at what this person looks like. Let's run it. Go back here. So let's go to look at, and you can see the person. Here is the person object. See, here is the person object. It has an ID, which is the correct ID here, right? It is the correct ID. All right, so we're able to get the ID because we got it from the attribute. Now I want to get the other ones. So basically the other ones are text values, right? So to have the text values, we need to catch these strings. Basically, these strings are happening between the start and the end. So between the start and the end, I need to catch, to have a buffer, for example, clear the buffer when the element starts, catch the data inside it, and then when this element closes, I need to catch that value, right? All right, so to do that, I need to have a string buffer, and that's a very simple, or it's called the string builder. Call it string builder, or maybe I can call it buffer, or maybe buffer. Okay, equal new string builder. All right, so here is the string builder, and basically whenever you see new characters coming in, this is what's going to happen here. I'm going to just add it to the buffer. To add it to the buffer, you just append it. So it's called buffer.append. And it follows exactly. You see here you have character array, you have a start and an end. You have exactly the same format here. Dot append, see, append, and you have a character, you have a start, and you have an end. All right, or you have a length, I mean. All right, So that's what we are going to do. Whenever we see any characters, we're just going to append it to the buffer. Very nice. So now what we want to do is when the element starts, we clear the buffer. To clear the buffer, what we need to do is say buffer.set length to 0. That clears the buffer. Now, when are we going to catch Bob Smith and assign it to the name? Because this event happens first, so I really don't know. And then what happens is I catch the text in the buffer. And then when the name closes, when it ends, I can go to the buffer and retrieve that name. Okay, so now we do the same thing here. So I can copy this from here, put it here. And what I could do is that if the local name is equal to name, for example, and let's say person.set name as what the buffer.toString. That's basically how you would catch the, so when you are ending the name tag is closed, I'll go to the buffer, retrieve whatever is there, and assign it to the name. And I just have a lot of else ifs here for the other ones. Else if, okay, here it is, and age, and I'll assign it to set age, and here we go. So that's when you end, right? That's when it ends. What I could do is I can also do the buffer set length to 0 here in the start or at the end, and it doesn't matter. I can do it here after I read everything. I can just do it here. I can come here and I can do it here. When you close, I'll do it here, right? But I think the best way is to do it here. Why? Because whenever you start a new element, you clear the buffer so that it's ready to accommodate the new text that shows up, if there is any text that's going to show up, right? So I can do it for the other ones. For example, I can do it for this. Now when the element starts, let's say when the address element starts, I need to create a new address, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is that else if when the local name is equals what? Equals address, right? Which is similar to this. I'll just say person.address equal new address, right? So I created a new address for it, right? That's when the address starts, right? All right. So now I created a new address, and then what I could do is I can feed this data into the, now I can come here and I could check to see if, right? Else if, I could do that, else if. And what I could do is, because I know that the address gets created only when an address tag is met and this address is null otherwise, I could check to see if the person.address is not equal to null. This means that you have created the address object and you are here in this section, right? So what I could do is I could say if, now I could put the other one now here, if I can do it like this inside it, if it's line 1, then I could do what? I could say person dot I could also do this using set address if I want. See, I could do set address, right? Could do it like this. You can set address to the new address. Okay, now set, and I can do get address right here. Okay, now so basically if it's line 1, I could say person dot get address dot set line 1 to buffer dot toString. So I can do that, see? And similarly I can have a lot of else ifs to catch the remaining parts of the address, right? Else, and another one here, and similarly else, another one here. And so this is this one, and this is the line 1, and then I have city, and then I have what? State, and I have zip code. Here's zip code. So set zip code, here it is. Set state, here it is, and set city, here it is. So basically you could see that this is how we are catching the strings. So how we are catching the strings. Before I do that, let me show you the strings. So basically this is every time we meet a characters, I'll append it, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say buffer.toString just to show you the contents of the buffer each time. Okay, let's run this. Okay, loccat. All right, you could see the characters that I am receiving. See Bob Smith, and notice that I am also removing them. You see here whenever an element starts, I clear the buffer. See here, I clear the buffer. Now if you scroll all the way down, also you could see that we captured all of them. You see the name is correct, the age is correct, the ID is correct, and the address also information is correct. So we are able to parse the person. Okay, so that's one simple way of doing that. That's a simple way of doing it using the SAX parser, and we did demonstrate that. So now, what if we have a list of persons? So if you go here, we have another API. Let's have this other API, persons. Okay, so that's persons means that it will start like this, and then it has other persons inside it. See? So it will start very similar, but it's persons, and then there is a person start, person end, person start, person end. This is a group of persons. See here, but it follows exactly the same inner structure of a person, but it's a group of persons. Okay. So now if I want to do that, so basically if you look here, after this is said and done, I get a person. And from the person, if you go back, this one, you're just getting one person. Now, if we want to capture multiple persons, so basically if we change the API to S here, right? So now what we want to do is create another parser, right? And that other parser, maybe I can create a new class. I call it persons parser, maybe. Persons XML parser. Here it is. So that's the persons XML parser, and it does exactly something really similar to what we just did. So I'll just copy all of this code, and we'll see how we can change it such that it can accommodate the change that we are seeing right now. Basically, now the only change that we are seeing is that now we have a group of persons. In that case, you're not only going to track one person, but you're going to track an array list of person, right? Person, and I call it persons, right? And that's going to be an array list. So let's say a new array list. Okay, so that's, new array list of persons, right? Here it is. Okay. And we'll keep the buffer and all of that interesting stuff. All right. And again, it's not going to return a person. It's going to return an array list of person. It's going to return an array list of persons, right? That's what it's going to return, and it's going to return not person, but it's persons, right? Okay. So now, if you think about it, when the document starts, we probably should just clean the create the array list, right? We can do that, right? When the persons start. So let's do that here. If it is person, right? All right. So, and this is an else if. So if it's persons, we could just do what? We can initialize the array list if we want to do that. Here it is. This initializing the array list. There it is. Okay. Persons equal new array list. Fine. All right. Now, whenever you create a new, whenever you see a person, we create a new person object. That's good, not bad. And we set its ID. Nothing will change here. And then similarly with the address and all that interesting stuff, right? And we clear the buffer. That's all the same because these events are going to happen exactly in sequence. The interesting thing is that when the person ends, this is a signal for you to add that person to the array list. So basically when the person ends, so basically what we could do here is copy this one, right? You could say if it's a person, if it ends, right? Else. So basically now if it ends, right? So what we need to do is we need to come in here and say persons dot add person. Basically that's what we're going to do, and maybe we could just make person to null, set it to null or something, or if we don't need it anymore, but we can keep it, it doesn't matter. But anyhow, so what is going to happen here is that when it closes, right, this means that we have accumulated all the person information because that's what we're looking for. And then when it closes, we just add that person to the persons list, right? That's the only change in the parsing. Everything else is the same, right? Because everything else, these events are going to still happen. See, when person starts, what we're doing is we're creating a new person, and then we are inside that element and all its children, meaning we're going and getting the name, age, setting it to that person, and then when you close the person, we just add it to the array list. Now, if we go to the code here, and instead of going to person, we're going to persons, and this parser is the persons parser. Here it is, the persons parser. So that's the persons parser, and then the persons parser returns to us an array list of persons. Okay, so this is an array list of person. We call it persons, right? Here is my the persons that are coming in, and I can print them. Here it is, printing them. All right. Let's go back to the app. Here's the app. It's running. We go to the logcat, and you can see that we did retrieve an array of persons. You see here, the first person is Bob Smith, age 25. This is its address. And similarly, the next one is Nevin Hobden, and so on. And you could see that we are retrieving the person, and all the values are coming in correctly. All right, so the trick with these SAX parsers is to think of the stream. What should happen when specific events happen? These events are start element, end element, start document, end document, and basically characters, which is just very simple. We just append it to the buffer in the characters. All right, please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.